This week on Rockstar Superhero. Billy Cobham's very existence is one of the few reasons I play drums at the level I do today. His surprise appearance in my life at a key juncture in 1977 was an indirect influence on me and gave my parents the go-ahead to invest in their young, ambitious son. You'll hear that story today. Bill, as he prefers to be called today, is a man full of energy. As he nears 80 years old, he still looks like he's in his 50s and acts like he's in his teens. He's so special and mind-blowing that I just can't control my excitement. It was a supreme honor to speak to him today, so I'm not going to give anything else away. This is my chat with the master who continues to be a student, Billy Cobham, on the Rockstar Superhero Podcast.
You're in Switzerland, right?
Uh-huh.
What took you there?
Curiosity about Europe, and actually, I saw some being in the United States since 1947.
Yeah.
I've seen some very, very interesting things that I went, God, is this all the Earth is? I mean, it's only here. There's got to be some other. And anytime that point would come up, I wouldn't ask a question about it, but when I would hear something about any place outside the shores of the United States, it was always, well, they have no idea what they're doing. They are, they're so below, and it was always second class, second level. And I wondered, okay, but I wonder what. Let me see if this is true.
Yeah.
At least a little bit. I mean, it can't be. Could it?
No, and it's not.
Really?
Well, I mean, to me, the United States is behind everybody. To me,
I'm not saying anything. To be quite honest, I think that it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I am so blessed that I was able to, with the help of those two individuals who made up my life, called Mom and Pop.
Yeah.
I got there.
Yeah.
And then at the end of after being, seeing what was happening and ending up in the military and understanding even more by then in 1968 and getting a shot with Horace Silver to go to Europe for the very first time, things started to really fall into. You talk about afraid to even set foot, in Germany.
Yeah,
and to have to land. It's called Tinkelhoff. Tempelhof Airport in Berlin, and that's where the man was landing and taking off from.
Yeah,
and. To me and John Williams, we were like, wow, we're here. This is really true. And the funny part about it is when we got off the plane, we're walking because it's right at, it's not far from Checkpoint Charlie, and we get off the plane and we're now coming into the main building to go out the door with Horace, and a guy it was like straight out of a movie. Hey, how are you guys doing? And I'm going, hey, I was brought up in Brooklyn, man.
Yeah.
And just as close to Dodger State as to Ebbets Field as you ever want to be. And it's like, what are you talking about? That my facial expression was, really?
Yeah.
You gonna try that here? And as it turned out, it was local. East German, Spetsnaz cuts, and we were me and John were in the military. So, immediately it was like, come on, man.
Yeah.
What's our best shot? Mind our own business. and keep going. But the observance opened up even more doors for me. That, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I went, so that stuff really exists.
Yeah.
Now I got to check this out. You know, now it's even more fun. You know, it's like, this is the book. All the words in the pages are starting to come off the page and starting to make some sense. So that's true. That's true. Okay. Yeah. Pay attention, and maybe you learn something. You know.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to do that.
Yeah. That's what makes you Bill Cobham, right? Do you go by Bill or Billy? I mean, I know everybody seems to use Billy.
Dad's gone, and so I took over the monocle.
Okay. Nice.
I used to be Billy before, and you know, and so now I'm Bill.
Okay. Well, I like it. Well, either way, it's an honor and a pleasure to meet you today. Thank you so much for making time for me.
Pleasure is mine, bro.
Oh man. So I don't know if I don't know if it's your wife, and I don't want to get personal. But
no, you don't have to get personal. She gets personal with it.
Okay. Is it fine? Is it Fina? Is it Fina?
Yeah.
Okay. I had sent an email to Fina, and I had explained my sort of origin story to her, and I don't know if that's how I ended up with this opportunity to connect with you. But may I share it today?
Okay.
So obviously the show isn't about me, it's about you, but you're a huge reason I'm here, actually. In 1977, I had been playing drums for about 5-6 years. And my parents took me to a music store in Spokane, Washington called Hoffman's. And you had just either been there or were going to do some form of drum performance or, you know, some sort of session at the store. And they had this huge, clear, you know, it was either a Vistalite set or a 5 set. It was one of those, you know, clear acrylic drum sets. Yeah. And it was orange. And it had all of these octobans. It had actually, I believe it had 16 octobans set up on the kit. And I was there with my parents. Little did I know, they were actually there to buy me my first professional drum set, because I had a smaller Rogers 3-piece kit. But that day, because they saw your drum set there, they were motivated to buy me a Vistalite kit. So I ended up with my first professional drum set that day, all because Bill Cobham had been there for something. and it was this beautiful moment of connecting a piece for me. And then interestingly enough, years later, I was in the Navy band. And I found out that you were an ex-military musician as well, which I didn't know. And so here we are. We have something in common. Although you went on to fame and fortune, and I went on to do other things.
Did you go to the Naval School of Music?
I did in Virginia there. Pardon?
I taught there.
I didn't know that, and I apologize for not knowing that.
No,
but
it's okay.
Yeah, you hear things through the grapevine. You hear about Doc Severinsen coming through, or all these different cats. But the fact that you, of all people, were such a sort of an off the side influence to me, and then later on,
with me was Grover Washington in the same band, and
wow,
Cecil Bridgewater, and who else is there? There used to be a show called The Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday nights,
right,
on TV, and the conductor of the show was named Ray Charles, and he also was the conductor of chorales and stuff like that. His son John Charles was in the band as well with me. He was a really close friend of mine.
Wow.
And he lived he passed on. He's from moved to Pasadena with his family, but he was a great arranger for the band. And there was a lot of guys in that band that I don't remember everybody, but a lot of us did the professional thing. Some guys went to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus straight out, or some guys went to Vegas. The circus bands are you really. That was dedication, and they rarely ever get any discussion about what goes on day-to-day life of a circus musician.
Right.
The seasons and all of that. That's a whole other world, man. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, clowns are in their own right. I mean, everything that's going on around them is like, come on, you can't be serious. But yeah, and then what they have to do, sometimes they only get 75 pages of music, maybe 25, 30 acts a show, and 3 shows a day, 3 different shows.
Yeah.
And they have to know all of that
Yeah.
the following day, read it all, and play.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And you again, this is something that I became aware of outside the shores of the United States. When I moved to Europe, you see a lot of circus bands, man. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And, fascinating.
It was a training ground, that's for sure. And for somebody like me who, I honestly, I would tell you, I was I wouldn't call myself a slacker. I loved to play the drums. And I still play today. But my pursuits were more about how I felt about it. It wasn't necessarily the technical aspects. So when I went to the school, I was trained up in theory, and I left knowing all my modes and really having significant sight reading skills. So I was definitely appreciative of what it did for me, because it led to a session career for me. That's what I did after I got out.
Yeah, well, same for me. I ended up in the studio.
Yeah,
primarily small, just a few accounts, but they were quite bountiful in terms of work. I mean, CTI Verve and places like that, or working for 3 or 4, 5 maybe different major local contractors. It got to the point where I was running away screaming. I didn't want to do that anymore. It was just driving me nuts, because I just, you try to get into something that it's a 30-second or a 28-second recording, and then you have a possible 20 minutes to get. If you don't get it right, you get 20 minutes more, and you get what? Back in those days, it was something silly like $15 for the 40 minutes, and then you had to do. You get the check 13 to 15 weeks later,
right?
But if you did 5 of them a day or so like this, you had something to look forward to eventually. Those were back in the days when I think the union didn't pay more than, God, I forgot what I used to get. It was like $60 for a recording session, or something like for 3 hours. And again, it was, if you read well, it was amazing how quickly they could make a record. Monophonic, just right on the cusp of the end of the monophonic era into the stereo thing, and all these things made a big difference to me. And watching that all come to morph into something else was an amazing thing. And it was such an honor to be able to go from hypothetically working with George Benson on a Giblet Gravy or Kenny Burrell on a God Bless the Child record, and next thing you know, on my schedule, I had to be in a TV show to sub for Grady Tate or Mel Lewis or somebody on a CBS special or something, because they couldn't make it because they had a conflict and they were trying. Right. It was just silly. I mean, I was like, who cares? I wasn't even about him, because I just did it, And then after that, I had to run down and do a sub for a Bobby Thomas at a Promises show, something stupid in the pit, and read that, and all of it was the word was sight unseen. You never saw it before, and you don't mess up. It was like, oh God.
Yeah.
But it was a lot. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talking about the price points, though, reminds me of why Hal Blaine did so many recordings, right? Why all you guys were doing 5 to 10 things a day, because you're building it up for the long term. And, and again, I don't want to talk about your finances or anything like that. But were there residuals?
Yeah, you did get residuals for jingles.
Gotcha.
Recording sessions, no. That whole digital royalty thing, that all of that stuff started to change then, I think. Yeah. But just doing the recording dates, that was cool. It was really cool to be able to go into a recording session at 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 to 1, 2 to 5, and I'd go where I was at Rudy Van Gelder's in Englewood, New Jersey, and the people that I'd have to record back up. I was only too honored to be a part of it, to be a part of a rhythm section with Ron Carter on bass, and the piano player could be either Herbie Hancock, Roland Hanna, Richard Wyans, Keith Jarrett. Who am I missing?
Yeah.
Those four primarily, and I'm missing somebody. And that was unless the star of the date was a piano player, which could have been Emir Diodato or Don Sebesky. So you had ended up with that rhythm section. Oh, and of course, George Benson was playing guitar,
right?
More likely than not, and it just sort of kind of went on like this. A whole record session back then, it started to extend into longer periods, like 2 days instead of one. One day to do 6 tracks and do some overdubs the next day if there any was one to be done. But generally speaking, the rhythm section stayed the same, not because of anything more than we knew what to do with each other, how to work with each other.
Yeah.
And so that was a good formula, and it was an honor to be part of that. It really was.
Yeah, no, those are amazing things. All the names you mentioned, it blows my mind how many people that we see as icons in, on their axis in this industry. So many people started, we all had to start somewhere, right? So small,
right, sure.
We all go from somewhere. But the fact that you have all these people around you, and there wasn't this sense of, oh my God, that's Keith Jarrett. You know what I mean? But just, that's my boy Keith. We're just doing a thing, right? We're just hanging.
Well, I can honestly tell you, if I've spoken to Keith Jarrett more than 3 times in my life.
Wow.
I mean, all I did was go and when I went into the studio, if he was playing piano on the day, I noticed that after I sat down to start to play, and I said, sound piano playing. Because I'm in a shell.
Yeah,
I'm inside my booth and I'm playing. Outside the booth, it's a bass player, and he's kind of like the lightning rod of everything, because he's playing bass in a big room that's resilient, and so that his sound is the low end. Everybody else, the piano player's in the corner. The piano could be covered by a blanket for separation. The guitar player is playing direct. The guitar amp is someplace else in the building, and so all of that's going on, and I'm identifying people by the style in which they're playing. So that said, I'm sitting in this booth with drums. I hear the piano player and said, "Oh, that's Keith. He's on the date." Oh, far out.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him yet,
Yeah.
And I can see Ron. He's in front of me, And then on the other side of Ron might be George Benson or some other John Tropez or somebody like this. I'm going, far out. Oh, that's John. That's Tropez. Okay, fine, cool. Yeah, and it only comes after we take a break, because okay, that's a take. Come outside to get some air and let all of the the flagellation out of the booth, and then you get back in again. And if you notice, hey, how you doing, man? Okay, fine. You start to play again. I heard towards another booth, but I hadn't seen him. I just heard it, and I said, "Oh, he's here. Good. I wonder what he's eating."
Yeah.
It's just that kind of situation.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you talk about recognizable sounds, right? Because everybody has a thumbprint, and you clearly have one. And I don't think you just have one to drummers, meaning, I listen to it. So I say, oh, that sounds like Bill Cobham. But it's this feel, there's this bounce to what you do that stands out. And I've noticed other people catch it. this morning, as I was having my coffee and prepping for this chance to talk to you, I decided to go on YouTube and I watched some of your stuff that you had done a few years back on Drumeo. And one of the So you're playing this piece, and you're just jamming right along. And I'm drinking my coffee and I'm bouncing a little, and I don't even recognize that I'm bouncing. I'm just listening, and then all of a sudden I catch myself. And I'm really, really throbbing. And I look across the room and I see these three people. They're all looking at me, wondering because I got my headphones on, right? And they're looking at me and they're all going like, and they're all bouncing and they're making eye contact with me because they're kind of mocking me, right? But my point, Bill, is that when this happened, I realized, it's Bill's natural bounce that's got me going. Right. It's that feel and that vibe and that jam that happens. And it's significant because it's singular to you. And so that's really, it's not a question. I just wanted to say, I agree with you 1,000% when you hear, like you said, oh, I know that's Keith. I can't even see him, but I know that's Keith. Yeah. When I hear you, I say the same thing. I go, oh, that sounds like Bill Cobham.
And it's the same thing would go for Chick Corea and
good Lord. Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I out of the three of them, I work with Keith the least. Yeah. And so it's like, what? As soon as you hear you hear the stamp on the keyboard, you hear the personality coming through the keyboard. You go, yeah, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
Or McCoy, or Roland Hanna. It's piano players, Richard Wines, and all these people. And I just know one after the other. Okay, Billy Taylor. It just went on like this. It was just the way it was.
Yeah. No, man. I know what you're saying. The fact that you just mentioned Chick made me a little sad for a second. Just that we lost him not too long ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What an immense talent. What was your? Still
around? He's got so much in catalog.
Yeah.
That probably hasn't been released. Like mine, it's almost endless. Something's going to show up again. I mean, to back up the stories. I mean, I remember one. I'm still trying to understand what happened. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe it's still around. But with Miles, it was an interesting situation where I was in the rhythm section with, I think it was still Michael Henderson and God knows who else now. But we were at 30th Street, which is an old desanctified church on Lexington and 30th, recording with Miles. I didn't know. I never knew what was going to come out on what record or what it was for until after it came out. So I never even thought about it. But this one situation that was unique is that Miles was starting to lean in the electronic direction. And he had this, they made a thing called a flanger and a phase shifter, but only it was, of course, in a big old box with a speaker and all of that on wheels, and you had to get two roadies to bring it in. And,
right, it's like a big Leslie.
Yeah, about and now the thing's about this big,
Yeah.
And it's got a microchip in it that it's insane, back then. So Miles is like hooking up all these lines to the trumpet, and they're trying to get a level on him. And all of a sudden, because it's New York City, not far away, I think LIB had stopped playing jazz. So, but there was a jazz station on the other side of the Hudson River in Weehawken or in Newark. And it's called BGO, and it still exists today, I think.
Wow.
And out of the blue, he's going do, and all of a sudden, trying to get this character out of the electronic stuff, he gets this, and it starts, and I'm going, wow, where'd that come from? That's Miles with Gil Evans, and where's what? It's and out of the Birth of the Cool, something like this. And I'm thinking, wow, it's amazing, man. And I'm like, I wonder where that's coming. Who would be playing this? We got to record, you know. Mom said, where is that? Who is that? Turn that off. You know? And the place is silent. T.O.'s not doing anything, but I see all of a sudden the engineer is running around trying to find what's happening. And also I see hands moving towards the tape recorders. Right. And I'm going, man. So what it turns out to be was that Miles started playing, it was Quiet Nights, and he started to play a solo against himself playing a solo on the recording, coming from the radio station in Newark.
Oh my God.
And so, and it's who might have been Larry Coryell who was on the record day. He said, somebody's got to record this right away, you know?
Yeah.
And then it went, you know, he started playing and people go record.
Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Because he's playing with himself, you know? He's playing on top of I know this. And he starts playing. And I'm going, oh no. It would happen that way. We all tried to do something on it, and it was like at the same time, and then it stopped. It was just right out of the middle of it, you know. It just went, man, what a transitional piece, you know.
Yeah, the fact that Miles, I mean, obviously, look, I never worked with the guy. I actually was unfortunate to have never actually seen him perform live, so I've only watched him on TV and things like that, or you know, obviously listened to a lot of his catalog, but. That the word genius gets thrown around a lot, but that cat was he was his own soul, if you know what I mean. You know, I mean, there was just nobody like that, and his wild-eyed experimentation had to be a blast to be around. It had to be really, really special. You knew you were in the midst of something special, right?
But yeah, it was always that I agree with you on. It what appeared to be on the extremes primarily when right. in his general purview in his immediate social environment, it seemed like just the normal thing to do. It was never anything extraordinary that I could find, at least when I was there. It was all about the music, and it was all a serious approach by everyone with no words of caution or this is what I want you to do. Right. It was this is where we're going. I remember receiving a chart to play on that was on elementary school notebook paper in a binded book that was glued together, white piece of paper, light blue lines, and 12 of those lines had a different note chromatically, and said, that's the scale we're going to use.
Wow.
And that scale started on this specific note and ended on that note, and that's where we were going to play. And I'm looking at it going, so they're 12 whole notes.
Yeah.
That's it. It's open season, man, but there was a groove, which is very interesting.
Absolutely.
That was set. That made you want to, as you said, you were moving. You wanted to walk or dance or some physical thing because it signaled that you should do that.
Yeah,
you felt comfortable about that. That was set, and then the rest of it was open season, man.
That had to be the greatest feeling to play within that, because there's boundaries, but it's like you said, it's open season on the boundaries, if you know what I mean.
It's 12 notes, but there is some either Miles or McLaughlin or someone had an idea in that key or in that key, it basically fundamentally a mode, at least to begin with, then to take it based on that concept and just move from section to section like water. It was very liquid, it was very fluid. But everyone had to not just listen from the standpoint of acknowledging that those notes were played, but what to do with them in real time for you and then for everybody else. Because what you're doing is that you're receiving information and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I agree. It's your part now is what's coming out. oh, maybe I can do this. And those are the words, but the notes represented the words, and it affected what everybody else did. So it was this big, locked, round table of thought that started to make up the face of the band in real time.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. You know, in comic books, I'm not a big comic book guy, but I do remember something from a comic book from 30, 40 years ago, where this guy was talking about this idea of what he called the unimind. And when I heard that word, I thought, oh, that's exactly what musicians do. We get together in a band, right? We set parameters, and then we say all bets are off within those parameters, and we all sort of become one. And the beauty of the best bands in the world, right, is that symbiotic thing that happens that can only happen between that particular core of musicians. And, you know, and audience can't see this. I mean, the video audience can, but, you know, you pointed at me because I know you agree. And that is so true. It's exactly how it feels. Was it ever scary? Because, I mean, to me, this is the dream. You know, you're in the middle of this thing and it's happening. But there had to be moments where you were playing live with anyone, with Miles or whomever, where all those bets were off, right? And you were exposed, and maybe you weren't on track with everything else.
Well, the first time that it happened to me in concert, this is when you get out of body experiences, that gets to that point where you go and you sit down in the audience in the front row. At least your spirit seems to. It's in mine. It was at the Copenhagen Jazz Festival, and I was working with Bill Hardman, Horace, John Williams, and Benny Maupin. And one of Horace's tunes could be "Natives Were Restless" or whatever, but it was smoking. We had it down so well, and all of a sudden I wasn't there anymore. I was watching me there. I was watching me play. As we were playing, and I was like, I got scared. It really did. It caught me off guard. It was the ultimate situation until I realized, wow, we have arrived at a certain. I have arrived at a certain level where it just felt very comfortable being there. But I also know I was being rewarded. Was a gift that I had to, in order to do it again, I would have to play to that level in the future to sustain, to do that. And it didn't happen more than 2 times more in my whole career that happened. Whereas I've watched bands, I've heard bands like Herbie Hancock's Mwandishi, where I could see where those guys, they lived every note, they lived every day together. That band was so tight that they were functioning a ball bouncing down the street and taking every bounce at the same time, you know, all together and absorbing it, and then responding in as a unit. Or listening to the Miles Davis groups of the mid '60s with Tony and Herbie and Ron and Wayne Shorter, and George Coleman at the very beginning started that with they were on another plane in another planet, and those recordings that they made were just beyond the understanding, and I could see where one could levitate something like this, you know. I mean, it sounds really weird, but it only happened to me in 2 other situations. One with Mahavishnu and one with my band. Most recently, maybe about 10 years ago or so. But we got to a certain level where I was like, "Wow, that's amazing," you know. And I understood that this can happen in martial arts, depending. I mean, if you study that kind of stuff, again, the rewards are great, but the in order for you to get there, you pay a pretty heavy price. I mean, just in terms of preparation and all of that to get your mind to that level. But the rewards can be amazing, if you're that dedicated, that committed.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. My show is about that exact thing. It's actually about the journey of the musician, right? And the reason I call it Rockstar Superhero is because I do talk to a lot of, well-known musicians. A lot of people call them rock stars because they don't have another word for it. But what I've found is the established people, someone like yourself who's been around a long time and has done a lot of really, I don't want to embarrass you, but important things, and been a part of the industry and is consistent with it. You're like a superhero. You bring this technique and skill that's uniquely yours, and you're giving it back to the people. And I think that is such a special, blessed thing, and it's much rarer than most people are aware of. They see somebody on stage and they say, wow, that band's really good, but it doesn't necessarily touch them in the soul. There's this deeper thing that happens sometimes and only with some musicians. And you're literally talking about that thing, that magic that happens. And I don't want to make this a religious discussion, but my imagination of heaven is us all playing music together. And it's just this one power and one sound. It's like all the notes happening at the same time, like every note on the keyboard, and there's no dissonance. It's just amazing, and we're present and we're there, and sort of kind of like almost like worshiping in that music together. And I feel like we get little glimpses of that here. And you mentioned 3 of them. I don't know if that's ever happened to me. And I wonder, do you chase that feeling still, or are you satisfied that you've had those moments?
I'm just satisfied I had those moments. I mean, because I don't know when it's going to come. I mean, one of the things that's really funny is to hear Maestro Bernstein say in all of his career, I think he wrote about it, said the only time that he ever had an experience like that with an orchestra was once when he was working with the New York Philharmonic as an assistant conductor, and everybody played the parts right.
Wow.
I'm not too sure whether it was Brahms or the Ninth Symphony for Beethoven.
Right.
But he said at that point in time in the old Symphony Hall in New York, wherever it was, he was frightened because there was I think somewhere in the vicinity of about 100 people on stage. If it was the Brahms or any of the Brahms or the Beethovens, and that's a lot of people, and for everything to be clicking exactly right from each individual.
Yeah.
And the key as well was that they were at a point where they never read the music anymore. They knew the music. Everybody knew their part that well that there was the books were closed, and they played it. And he conducted without a baton. He conducted with his face. He just smiled.
Oh my God.
And that one, he did that a few times, and you can find that on the net where he's conducting a specific piece, and he's only smiling at you. He's just smiling.
Oh my God. I got it. No, I have to look for that.
They're spot on, man. They're spot on.
I love that you brought up Bernstein, because my mom was a huge fan, and one of the most immaculate records I ever heard was the AB of American in Paris and Rhapsody in Blue.
Yeah, sure.
And when you first started telling that story, I was for sure you were going to tell me that was the recording, because that is one of those immaculate recordings.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's hard when you've either written a piece or you're conducting a piece, and when most people don't realize this because they're not conductors. When you're standing there in front of a band, you really do hear everything. You really do. It's not just an amalgam of sound. You hear when the oboe's a quarter tone sharp. You know, and it's shrill.
You know it's coming.
Yes.
Before it comes. You know where it's going to come because it happened in rehearsal, and you couldn't get them to stop it, or there were so many other things to do. You said, "Oh, I'll deal with that later," and you didn't deal with it. You know, it's just one of those things that. But when you're not doing, when nothing happens that catches your attention, except every note being in the right place, played in the right way, and phrased at the right time,
right?
That can be addictive. I mean, I remember in Mahavishnu, we would play, and we played so much that it was for me, considering it, looking back, I'm surprised it didn't happen more often, that we just levitated. I mean, it got to a point where everybody knew what to do, but when it happened in that band, it wasn't because of the amount of notes that we played that fit into a bar of a very, very fast piece.
Right.
It was about the amount of notes that were selected to play within a bar that presented a sonic image.
Yes.
That was just clear as for us in the orchestra as it was in the band, as it was for the people, at least for me. And that was Lotus and an Irish Stream, something like this, or I think it was that. McLaughlin was playing banjo to start, and then we went into that piece, and I got to tell you, the band just left everybody. I mean, everything just sort of, for me, I'm now sitting in the Olympia Theater in Paris.
Yeah.
Third tier, looking down at me playing on the bandstand. And
wow.
Because this was our last show for the summer in Europe. We had our first 2-week break in 6 months, where we were actually going to be without not doing anything on holiday, which is also scaring us because we didn't know what to do since we were playing all the time. So now the problem was about sleeping, about how do I relax? What do I do?
Yeah.
But that was like, I slept on this. I felt like I was playing with brushes, trying to just create a feeling, an atmosphere. But I was watching me physically do that from 2 tiers up in the balcony.
Oh man!
And it was another world, man. And that made me feel quite fulfilled, actually, because then I understood what it was. By then, but that just stood out. Maybe there was some other period out of body experiences, but they don't come close to that. That was amazing because John was playing slow. Yeah. John was choosing the notes, exact what note, when, where, and it was spot on.
Yeah.
That one was a rarity. I mean, normally the notes blew by like a Shinkansen in Japan.
Yeah.
Left the station a long time ago, man.
Yeah. I think I mean, you're saying it over and over. You're saying it was transcendent. There's this this thing that's actually it's unexplainable. It's that intangible of that moment.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, my own personal sort of a definition of what you're experiencing is, I think of, musicians like myself, we tend to grow up, whatever we're listening to, if we like technical ability, a lot of musicians, that's the first thing they go after, right? They listen to Al Di Meola. They listen to, Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra. They listen to all these things because they love the idea of the challenge of the pieces, and they want to learn how to play those pieces. They don't want to listen to them. They want to actually learn how to do that so then they can one-up it. That's like it seems to be like the young musician's goal of how many notes can I fit into this bar, right?
But the thing is that the young musician never grows old.
No,
in
No.
terms of mind. So it's only that concept and that approach.
Yeah.
As the body grows older, you know,
Yeah.
and the brain may mature in other ways, you're still playing competitively. You're not playing musically.
Yes. Yes. And so I think, and then it's perfect. Thank you for adding that. What happens to me when you mention McLaughlin was playing slower, right? He had slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
He had given the band space to get into this mode where you not only synced up physically but spiritually, right?
But this is what happened. It's back to front. The band always played it. We were always going to play that. Whatever we had. Boom, 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 ding, dong, boom, ding, dong, ding, dong. But he didn't have to do that. He would play some other stuff that was just otherworldly through it. Okay, cool. I mean, but that's John. It became expected of him to do that, and he never disappointed.
Right.
But he would take it up another level, and bizarrely enough, when he took it up another level, he played more simply. So there is the combination. He's, instead of like all over the instrument with a lot of notes in between and passing, no. He would do it with just the right note at the right time in the right place. And you go, so you can do that. And it would be something that lasted in thought for years. He didn't do it again.
Yeah. The echoes of it.
I've done it, you see.
Yeah.
It's like listening to Love Supreme. Okay. I can hear that solo once every 10 years. Right. I can't hear it anymore. You know why? Because it just envelops me and engulfs me. It just takes me. I'm not in control. It's incredible, you know, and all kinds of things. Like I have a lot of John Coltrane that I've listened to only once, and gone. If I listen to that anymore, I won't be able to do anything else, you know.
I understand that completely.
And so it's just there in the record collection. And sometimes as a reference, I pull it out and put on a certain amount of it and go,
wow. Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the beauty of music, right?
There you go. Or working with McCoy, Tyner on stage, or listening to in his later years, I was quite honored to just play a couple of weeks with him, and it was like, wow, that's as close to train as I'll ever get, you know. And, woo, it was an experience, man. It was wonderful, and I only wish I had more time to just because I had matured enough to understand that. I felt what he needed was support. He was the orchestra already, you know, and I was just someone to keep him afloat, help him express himself and project himself in the way that he saw fit. I didn't need to add any more because he had it already. All of it was already there, you know. He didn't need a drummer. The first night at the Blue Note, he physically destroyed on the bandstand the Steinway C piano that was in the Blue Note because it just didn't project, and he wanted a Steinway D, and they didn't provide it.
Yeah.
So he just promptly went up on the bandstand and just dismantled it physically within 2 sets. It wasn't happening anymore, and it was on a Friday night or something like that. I can't remember when it was. No, it couldn't have been. It was on a Tuesday. We opened, I guess.
Okay.
And on Wednesday morning, he was at Steinway on 57th Street, and he got Steinway to allow him to play that week on one of only three Steinway Ds made out of Hamburg in all of America, all of North America, including Canada, you know. There were only 3 of them, and one of them was in the Blue Note.
Oh, that's a great story. I wish I could have seen
Heavy
that.
about that is that I was playing on a small Yamaha drum set already. I couldn't be heard. I mean, he didn't need me. I mean, Stanley Clark was the bass player, and we were like diminished in comparison to him and the piano.
Yeah.
Piano never needed any microphones. If anything, and the drums couldn't have microphones because there was no place to put them.
Right.
There was no space on the bandstand. You know,
Yeah, it's a small stage. Yeah.
We're sitting on
with a D anyway.
Yeah, and it was like, man, it was like heaven hearing all of that stuff. It was amazing.
Oh my gosh. You know, all these things you talk about, they're so inspiring. What musicians inspire you today? That might be a trite question, but you know, who are you listening to and who moves you?
Lately, it's everybody and no one. I mean, I just listen to everything that comes by that I have access to, and I have no real names. I just drummers or support. I mean, the oracle for me has been always the only living oracle at this point in time for me is Roy Haynes. Was one of the oracles. He fit into this group with Louis Bellson and Rich and Sonny Payne and let's see who else. I mean, Rudy Collins, all those kind of people I could look to for information. Ed Thigpen, little quips here or there. Grady Tate, of course, my mentor. Thigpen was a mentor.
Yeah.
You know, so working with people like that. And of course my colleague was Tony Williams. It was just like these kind of people always were somehow around me. And it wasn't about asking questions, it was about watching the actions of them and getting valuable information from what they did.
Yeah.
Words just came too quick, but what they played, you went, okay, I got it, you know.
Wow.
You know, and Roy still does that. Can you imagine? What, 96?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's obviously a few masters still left. I mean, and even though it might embarrass you, you're squarely in that category as well.
Not me, and I'm still a student. I always will be. But you know, so would Roy would say the same thing. But there's a difference, you know. And for me, from my viewpoint, I'm still looking outward, and the stuff that I come up with to share with people is just sort of like offhand, like, well, if you think what would happen if you looked? I mean, this is something I just came up with. I just found this out, and this is how I'd come across to a quote unquote student. Check this out. You know, now you'll have two. If you do this, you don't forget what you already done if you feel comfortable with it. But this might be something as an alternative, not better, just as an alternative. Maybe it might help your other situation to be better. Who knows? But it's there. I did it. I don't know. You know, it's just always coming sort of like, yeah, you know, I just came across this, or I came across that, or you know, what about the rims on the drum? You know, how are they built? You know, what kind of materials used? Why? I mean, how would you combine that with a shell made from rosewood? And why would you use rosewood? Do you want more tone, or do you not? I mean,
right.
These things that I'm thinking about, and I'm going, I wonder what happened. And again, we come right back around to me leaving the United States because I just wanted to find out about rosewood. Okay, hypothetically, where would they use and work with rosewood? All of a sudden, I go, well, what about Costa Rica? Yeah, they make a lot of mallets down here. Or you know, and the next thing you know, here we go. I'm going down to find out to only understand that they make xylophones and everything. And what do they put between the bars? Pig bladder.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
There you go. And so you get that buzz. And that's different than the way a marimba would be made, or I should say, a xylophone a balafone would be made in Africa.
Yeah.
Using cabasas and all of it. And you go, okay. And then you go to a place like like Nigeria, and you find out that they're working with mineral stones because Nigeria is very heavy in mineral, in iron ores and all, and they actually looking for stones that are in tune and chipping away to get the stone in tune. And they, you know, Okuda percussion. It's with a stone percussion. Yeah.
Wow. So we've been talking about all these beautiful things, the transcendence. We've been talking about the stuff between the lines, the ideas of how pieces of percussion are made and how things are put together and all the different ways a culture approaches things.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I want to ask you that has nothing to do with any of that is just simply just a basic question you've been asked a million times before. But of all the stuff you've done and all the different artists you've played with, was there one particular moment, a song, a recording, an instance, a take that you just said, oh my God, like I've done the thing, you know, like I'm not talking about being the perfect musician or, you know, becoming a master, but when you were a child and you picked up a drumstick for the first time and you said, someday I'm going to X, and that X happened sometime in your career. Can you tell us what that moment was?
I was playing marbles in front of my one of my best friend's houses down on the street with about 8 or 10 of us. We were either, there was a game called, was it marbles? No, it was Skelly. And Skelly was this game with bottle tops from liquor bottles,
Sure.
Coca-Cola bottles, and we used to save them and collect them, and then we used to play this game in a big square box that was a square part of the sidewalk, and you use chalk. It was in summertime, of course, and you wore your best holy jeans. And what you did was you put in each corner of the box was a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there was another square inside, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the one in the middle was 9.
Craps for kids.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody. And so what happened was then, you know, once everybody finished the game, the next thing was, okay, now what do we do? You know, well, I don't know. And then somebody would say, Ivan, yeah, what would happen? I mean, I'm talking about, I'm 6 years old, 5 years old, somewhere in there. What do you want to do when you grow up? Or no, 6 years old. You grow up? Yeah, I guess I'm going to be a doctor. Okay, what do you want to do? And so it went all the way around till a little guy, which ended up being me, said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a drummer. I want to be a musician.
Wow.
And they said, you can't play any music immediately, you know, because that's what kids do.
Yeah,
especially all the older ones. Now they're going to come down on you. I said, I can. They said, no, you can. Yes, I can. No, you can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. You know, this kind of thing. And finally they said, well, show us or show me. And the alpha would always say is to the little, okay. And you go, I went over to a car fender and I started to play a montuno on the car fender. And I was like, wow, Billy can play drums, right? And the thing about that is that leads to the fact that they acknowledge me.
Yeah, peers. Yeah.
All of a sudden, at 3'5" or whatever I was, you know, I became as tall as them in my own mind. I said, yeah, okay. Now I'm a veteran, you know, and it all of a sudden that was a springboard. That because I knew that there was something. You know how important that is, man, to a person. People to this day may be in their 90s and never knew what they wanted to be.
Yeah,
they never grew into anything that they felt comfortable being. And here I am at 6, 7, 8 years old max. I can't be more. Going, okay, I can't. I'd love to go and play baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers, but I don't think I'll. I'm just too short or too small. All this kind of stuff. So it's better just to go to the game, my dad, and watch. But that's about it. If it wasn't music, it would have been baseball, probably.
Really?
Until I flunked out. And then my secondary military occupational status, of course, MOS, was photography.
Oh my gosh. So I don't. How much more time do I have? I know it's very late there, Bill.
I gotta run. Unfortunately, it's 60 minutes past 11.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then
Yeah.
I will say this. I will say thank you. I will bow to you.
Okay.
This has been an absolute honor for me. You're a legend, and you're kind. And thank you so much for continuing to be who you are. I know you didn't come here to promote this, but I did want to say this because I know you have, this thing coming up here in a couple of days. You're doing a master class,
Right.
with Dom Famularo, right?
Oh yeah, but we go back. Man, it's almost 40 years. Yeah.
Wow.
40,
Wow.
50 years, I guess. Yeah.
So where can listeners, especially obviously percussionists, where can they sign up for this? I would love them to participate.
They can sign up at Stages, and I'm trying to find this because I wasn't expecting that. I'm trying to find my. Oh no, that's Charles Booker. No, let's try another Charles here.
Google is your friend.
There it is. Stages, Charles Simon. Okay. And if they go to Stages Music Arts and that's www.stagesmusicarts.com. You'll find Billy Cobham's Guide to Stress-Free Drumming, and that involves me and Dom through the whole thing. Throughout this year, we do one a year or two. One a month or so, or two at the most, of these things with the help of great people like Gary Husband, Dennis Chambers, Will Calhoun. And you never know who else is going to show up, but so far it's about just that. We're just testing the waters to see how we get going, and if we can keep it going, then by all means it's going to be something. Because I'm always playing and bringing up some ideas based on my own concepts, and then having everybody tear me apart in the process. There's always something else, that I never thought of. So I end up still studying. That's where I am, the student.
Yeah, the master is the student becomes the master, and vice versa. It keeps going.
There you go. Yeah, otherwise I get bored. I know the post office needs more workers, but I don't think I'm ready for it.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's been a real joy and pleasure. Thank you so much for the honor. I appreciate this very much.
No problem, Rob. All the best. Have a good one. Huh?
Take care, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.